Alright guys, let's do some review before you do the self-test. The first thing I want you guys to remember is that when a variable does not have a coefficient, the coefficient is understood to be 1. Okay. One of the things that you learned early on was that the coefficient of x is the number next to it. So the coefficient of x would be 3, but when there's no number next to x, the coefficient is understood to be 1. Okay? The next thing you need to know before you do the self-test is that you do what's inside parentheses first. Then you do multiplication and division. Then you do addition and subtraction. PEMDAS. That's one way you could remember it. Parentheses, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. PEMDAS. Okay? Parentheses, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. Remember that if there's no sign in front of the number, the sign is a positive, okay? Whenever there's no sign in front of a letter, the sign is a positive. Remember that. When you're adding or subtracting, and your signs are different, you subtract. So since the signs are different, here I'm going to subtract. 4 minus 3 is 1. And since the bigger number is positive, my answer is positive. I'm not going to write it because when I don't write it, it means it's positive. When my signs are the same, and I'm combining terms, I add. When the signs are the same, I add. So 3 plus 2 is 5. And the sign of my answer is going to be the common sign. So here the common sign is negative, so my answer is going to be negative. The signs here are the same, so I'm going to add. And the sign is going to be the common sign. The sign of my answer is going to be the common sign. And the common sign is positive, so my answer is positive. Negative 3xy minus 6xy. Well, my signs are the same, so that means I'm going to add my 3 and my 6. That's going to give me 9xy. And the common sign is negative, so my answer is going to be negative. So when the signs are the same, you're going to add, and your answer is going to equal, the sign of your answer is going to equal the common sign. So since this is a common sign, your answer is going to be negative. And since the signs are the same, you're going to add the numbers, and your answer is going to be negative. When you're subtracting a negative number, this negative here means to take away the negative. That's one way of thinking about it. So think this negative means take away the negative. So I'm going to do 3, then I'm going to take away this negative, so it's going to become a positive 2. And since the signs are different, I'm going to subtract. 3 minus 2 is 1. And since my larger number has a negative, my answer is going to be negative. Here it means take away the positive. So I'm going to have 4. I'm going to take away the positive, and only the negative is going to stay. Since my signs are different, I'm going to subtract. And since my bigger number is positive, my answer is going to be positive. So when you see a negative in front of a parentheses like this, just remember that negative means take away the sign, whatever the sign is inside the parentheses. So if the sign inside the parentheses is negative, you're going to change it to positive. If the sign inside the parentheses is positive, you're going to change it to negative. When you're multiplying numbers or variables, if the signs are the same, your answer is going to be positive. And you're going to add the exponents. And you're going to multiply the numbers. Since there's no coefficient to x here, the coefficient is understood to be 1. That's the first thing that we reviewed. So 1 times 2 is 2. So my answer is a positive 2x squared. Let's do another one. The first thing I'm going to look at is, what's my sign going to be? Well, since the signs are the same, in multiplication, when the signs are the same, your answer is positive. And now I'm going to look at my numbers. I'm going to multiply them. What's 3 times 4? 12. Now I'm going to look at my variables. I'm going to multiply those. Well, when I'm multiplying variables, I add the exponents. That's all I do. So 3 plus 1 is 4. That's my answer. When I'm dividing variables or polynomials, if my denominator is bigger, I'm going to divide. So here my denominator is bigger. The way I find my answer to 4 divided by 2 is I ask myself, what times 2 equals 4? Well, 2. 2 times 2 equals 4. So my answer is 2. And I'm going to subtract. In division, you subtract the exponents. So what's 2 minus 1? 2 minus 1 is 1. So I just have x to the first power. And in division, just like in multiplication, when your signs are different, your answer is negative. So my answer here is negative. When my numerator is smaller, I'm going to just reduce the fraction if it's reducible. Okay? The way I know if the fraction can be reduced is if there is a common factor between 5 and 10. Is there anything times a number that gives me 5 and that same number will give me 10? That's a common factor. For instance, 5 times 1 equals 5 and 5 times 2 equals 10. So 5 is a common factor because it's a factor of 5 and 10. So 5 is my common factor. So that means that this can be reduced. So since I find my common factor, now I'm going to divide by 5. Five divided by 5 is 1. And 10 divided by 5 is 2. The way I figure out my answer is I ask myself, well, what times 5 gives me 10? 2. Okay, that's my number. And since my signs are the same, my answers are going to be positive. Now I'm going to do the variables. Well, this is x to the first, and this is x squared. I'm going to subtract these, and the x is going to stay in the denominator because the larger exponent is in the denominator. And this is going to be my answer. So the thing you need to remember is that when you are dividing and your signs are the same, your answer is going to be positive. When you're dividing and your signs are different, your answer is going to be negative. When the numerator is bigger than the denominator, you're going to divide. When the numerator is smaller than the denominator, you're going to reduce. The last thing you need to know before you do your self-test is that any value raised to the 0 power equals 1.